Ms. Hernandez comes up, board members, one of the biggest, so today, hopefully, we're modeling a little bit of that learning and that processing and feedback loops that we'll need to continue to strengthen and lean into and have as part of our regular practice. And coming out of last year's negotiations, we heard over and over again some misconceptions, some misunderstandings around um, budget cycle. We did a lot of work to try to improve the communication around how that works, what we're bringing forward. And more than anything, we have a lot of lessons learned about how we need to really be continuously assessing the staffing, the hiring, staffing and budgeting, contracts, and all the things that make up running a school district. For example, just a minute ago, we discussed this idea that there are expert people in certain areas that we lean into as we build the capacity of our staff and as we think about sustainability efforts over time. Similarly, as we think about all the jobs that we have in place, the fact that we have grants that expire, one-time funds that expire, what we really want to engage in this year is a more thoughtful process that is not layered with labor negotiations, new rules from classified around noticing employees by March 15th and May 15th that kind of hit us, along with a loss of big money around federal expenditures. So that was a perfect storm that we just went through last year that had many layers of complexity. And the lesson learned is that we really need to be thoughtful and consistent and guide our decisions in a very disciplined and rigorous way. So this morning when we met again with principals and managers, we did talk about the need to rethink all of our investments and really relook at all the work that we do. And to that end, I just want to remind us that we have all these ed code requirements around when Kim gives us first interim, second interim, 45-day budgets, unaudited actuals, and so on. And we've seen that budget cycle, you'll see in a minute. We also have requirements around the LCAP and when that gets done, and what data we have available to us when we write the LCAP, just like we do with the single plan for student achievement. And then August comes up, we get all brand new test scores, and all of a sudden the picture emerges slightly different. And so that's what happens. That's part of this complex system of education that we are running. So even this morning when we met with our principals, we said, look, we know you wrote single plans. You all reviewed them. You all got a chance to approve them. We know we used a lot of information around students' test scores then, and you made investments based on what we thought at that moment was the context and time. Now that we've settled our negotiations, now that we know what kind of budgets we have, now that we're entering into a new year with new fresh data on state scores, along with our formative scores that we will do, we all need to really rethink, even though the board may have approved a budget, we really need to ask ourselves, okay, we got that budget approved. Are we really going to do it? Are their students going to be better off with it? And does the data still point to that need? And that's something I'm asking of not just cabinet leaders, but also principals, managers, and anybody who's managing a budget, as well as staffing. When we're looking at, in a minute with Kim, we'll look at our org chart. We'll need to really walk ourselves through a more rigorous process for deciding when Dr. Becchio's asked by a principal, I'd like to have a new teacher because I don't want to have a combination grade level, for example. We're going to have to bring in Kenya and look at our enrollment numbers and look at our transfers and look at, is this something we're going to do, or is this something we're going to really take some time to assess? And that's what the beginning of this report is today for you, is to really acknowledge all the decisions that get made in a certain time and context, and then what happens when you open a new year, and then the process throughout, so that by the time we get to spring of next year, you won't be surprised as to how we're being organized and what kind of investments we're making. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Hernandez to take you through how we plan to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is our very, very first budget sustainability report. So the purpose of this report, as Dr. Maldonado said, is to kind of ensure that the board is aware of the process that we'll be taking to identify where we need to tighten up, different things that we need to do in order to maintain our budget. I had this conversation with the managers today, the principals, and also the classified management. And what I wanted to stress to them is that when we talk about budget, we're not talking about, in general, one budget. We're talking about all the many, many, many budgets that make up the one budget. We probably have anywhere from 30 to 40 budgets that are all built into this one big budget that we present every time. And so all of us, everyone in our organization has an impact on that budget. We have budgets in our departments. We have budgets in our school sites. Some of our school sites have 5, 6, 7 different budgets. So all of that, all of those pieces build into one big budget. And when we talk about how negotiations impact all of that, that means that all of those little budgets that build up into the one big one have all grown by the fact that we had these large staff increases this year. And some of the budgets that were created before any of that occurred. We knew we were having negotiations, but we didn't know what that outcome would be. And it ended up being higher than what we had been projecting all along. So these are kind of things where we need to now assess where we are today and the different things that we need to look at. And so our goal is to have you all see very clearly and have the public see very clearly the things that we are doing to address all of these items. But first, we start with our values. As with everyone's budgets, your home budgets, you're going to put your money where you value the things the most. And so our very first statement is that we are trying to improve our student outcomes. That's what everybody in the school district is trying to do. Every single budget is trying to do. And we want to support all of our quality educators to promote the success for our students. And when I talk about educators, I'm not just talking about teachers. I'm talking about everyone in the system, because we all have some form of education for our students. We all are in that system. It's important that we are going to remain fiscally solvent for the current short term and for the long term. When I present the budget to you, we're always talking about at least the current year and 2 years out. And we're trying to be really transparent in this process and also meet the diverse needs of our district. This is the org chart that Dr. Maldonado is talking about. It's a little hard to see because it is so big. But we want to just start with thank you. The very first column there is our school principals, because they are under this umbrella, and that's where, you know, our teachers and our school site people are under that umbrella. And then across the top, we have our assistant superintendents, our different departments. So what we're looking at is we're going to be looking very closely at how this wonderful family tree works, and kind of assess, you know, if we end up with vacancies, if we end up with changes in departments, how that affects the system and what we need to do. So one of the changes, very recent changes is under the operations and accountability, where we have our technology, our technical support, our ETS, our information systems. The CTO has left, and so we're not filling that position, and we're having, as you know, you voted on tonight, Rob Cooper is now going to be the director of ETS, but we're not filling that space, and we're going to use that money to help our budget. So those are the kinds of things we're going to be looking at, especially as it relates to administration and managers. Yes.
So you may be asking yourself, what does that mean? How is that going to happen? The CTO position was created many years ago, probably 2 superintendents ago, to meet the need of a one-to-one device project. And that called for that time to do something like that. We fulfilled that objective, and we think that we don't need to have such a high-level position anymore, because now we have that program going, and therefore scaling down makes sense. There shouldn't be changes and disruption to the business of the district, because we've done it for so many years now. I want to say something like 10 years somebody will clarify for me, but Rob is shaking his head. So just about 10 years, we've had this one-to-one device program. We've got it all running like a machine now. So we don't need to have that kind of investment in that kind of level. And we're going to be looking at things like that. So you might be asking yourself, will services change? Not really. We hope we got it to a point where we no longer need that, and Steve can, Mr. Vance can take care of that department now.
Thank you. So just as a reminder that the district and the Santa Barbara Teachers Association negotiated the largest salary increase that we have had in at least 2 decades. That's amazing. And we're very happy about it. And we're very happy that we've been able to do this for our employees. But it came at a very large cost. The total estimated impact for that negotiation is $24 million over the 2 years. And we're going to be deficit spending by $21 million. Well, deficit spending means that in any current year, your expenditures are greater than the revenues that are coming in that current year. You may still have a beginning balance that helps to cover that. You may still have reserves that helps to cover that, but deficit spending, just in a very general term, is you're spending more money in a year than what you are receiving in a year. So we are going to be using our reserves to help pay for those salary increases. And we're going to have to see a pretty healthy $12 million in cuts in order to maintain our reserves. And we're going to need to look at how we do our business differently across the district. So that is what this whole report is about, and what we're going to be doing is looking at how we're going to do things differently, or where we can kind of help support our budget. These are the objectives that we're using to identify fiscal sustainability. So this slide is just basically telling us ways that we have identified to ensure our long-term financial stability. We're going to try to have balanced staffing levels. We're going to improve efficiencies, and we're going to search out additional funding sources where we can. And this is how examples of how we're meeting those objectives already. We are really working on our energy efficiency. Our Mr. Desmond Ho likes to come up and tell us wonderful ways on how we are conducting energy audits, how we are doing energy efficient lighting, how we're looking at HVAC systems and appliances, all the wonderful things that we're doing that are not only going to sustain our budget now, but will sustain our budget in future years. This is really forward thinking, and it's really what we need to be doing. And of course, our solar projects. Looking for additional funding. We are always looking for grants, always. And we have some already in the works. Career technology, career tech education, CDE grants, anti-bias grant, community partnership planning. Those are just some of the many grants that we're doing. And we're also using partnerships to help with our funding sources and to, supplement where we can. We have an amazing partnership with the Santa Barbara Education Foundation, who is always, always there to help us, and Lenny Foundation and several others. Dr. Maldonado mentioned that we are having a new bus company. Zoom is going to be amazing. I'm already really impressed with all the things that they're talking about, how they're going to really help our district, not only for the safety of our students and to be able to know which students are on the bus and which students get off the bus, and for parents to be able to know exactly when the bus is arriving, just like you would on Uber or Lyft. But also the fact that they are going to really be analyzing our routes, because we're not changing anything right off the bat, just so parents and everybody know. We are starting the year with the exact routes that we have had all along, and we are even adding a couple. But as time goes by, they will be using data and to find out if there are different ways that we can actually be more efficient in our busing. So they have done that for other school districts, and they ended up saving other school districts a lot of money. So these are areas that we are going to be focused on, and we are having, we are creating a group that, a cabinet level group that will study these areas: travel and conference, facilities, catering, programs, everything that we can. We are going to be digging deep into all the areas of our budget and trying to find out if there are ways that we can do things better. If there is something that we've been doing for 10 years that we have, solved or changed or fixed, and we can do it a different way. All those kinds of things. We're going to be really careful looking at it. So we will be reorganizing the district with results in mind, and we're going to be bringing you a report, and so that you can know exactly what we're doing, and the public can too. That's it.
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any requests to speak on this item? Ms. Bill? No.
Thank you for that presentation, Kim. I have a question. We've been talking about finances quite a bit over the last, for a while. And how are we planning to include other stakeholders in this conversation? You talked about cabinet level conversations that are going to happen monthly. And I noticed on the governance calendar, which is coming up, that we are actually going to have more regular presentations with, I believe, financial strategic planning. So if people have concerns about financial issues, will those conversations happen at board meetings, or what are the other opportunities that will be available to teachers, staff, the public to ask questions and get clarification?
I sort of misspoke when I said a cabinet level. We today we determined in our meeting with the principals and with the classified managers that we wanted to have at least one classified manager and one principal on the group that looks at these items very carefully. So we did try to broaden that as well.
Just to add to that, I do have regular meetings with our labor partners. In the note to the board, I did talk about the fact that we are going to increase some of the frequency of those meetings. And so whatever you're getting, others will also get. Sometimes it'll be before you get it or after you get it, but there'll be some syncing in of sharing information. I do want to recognize that the building of the capacity of everyone to understand all of this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, because we also want principals running school systems, sites. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get that thoughtfully out to people. And I welcome any and all ideas for how we can do that. The engagement of people in the decision-making is not the same as what kinds of things we'll be identifying. So I just want to be clear that there's two different processes happening with that.
Yeah, I understand that, there's definitely people with expertise and knowledge in the decision making, really, because they understand these things. Would the principals be representing the teaching staff?
So there's what Kim was speaking to is a process we're going to engage in that will really look at every expenditure coming forward when it comes to the, if you can show slide 7, Sandra. We're asking people to really tighten up their budget, their expenditures, right? Next, let's see.
The other one more, I think.
The other way. Keep going. Here. Oh,
That
there.
one. Nope.
Oh,
Back.
right here. So we are asking people to really, for lack of a better word, freeze their spending and make sure that when we're bringing it to you, when you look at consent items, when you look at action items for approvals, that we've gone through a rigorous decision-making process for why we're bringing it forward. So just like today, I pulled the ambulance contract. You guys asked some really good questions that led us to realize, wait a minute, there's no coherence across the decisions that are being made. Let's pull it back. Let's create a system for deciding how it's going to go forward. So similarly, when we look at travel and conference, we're really going to put a group together that'll be Ms. Hernandez. If it has to do with staffing, Dr. Vecchio. We're going to have somebody represent my office, myself, or one of my designees. And we're going to include a representative from the principals. Today, they chose a principal to represent principals and a classified manager. That committee will get together after the leading cabinet member has agreed, yes, this is a justifiable travel expense, because I'll just make it up. school psychologists have to attend a new training on identifying students in an IEP, and it's in San Diego, let's say. So then that will be brought to the cabinet leader. It'll go through that decision-making process, and we'll be asking ourselves questions like, does it meet a compliance need? Will the district business be interrupted if we don't do it? Will there be any compliance reasons, any district goals that won't be met because didn't happen, and so on. And that'll be true for anything that has to do with travel and conference, contracts we're bringing forward. We're really looking at catering for meetings. We're asking people not to do that anymore. Last year, we did do a lot of that, especially when we have all-day meetings where we have people sometimes even working through lunch. We do have the DEMLAC parent catering budget that will be intact. So I'm looking at my DEMLAC parents, don't worry. But we're really going to be bringing some of these expenditures every single time so that we're really clear at the cabinet level with managers and principals at the table for why this is being brought forward. The staffing, as Kim said, like with the CTO is another good example of asking ourselves, do we really need one? Will it impact district business? No, actually we don't. Let's get rid of that and save that money. We did it last year with Ed Services. We went from having 2 assistant superintendents to 1, K-12. And so that's that committee that's going to just really be more rigorous and disciplined in the decision-making of what we're asking you to approve, but really asking ourselves first, is this really needed? As far as the what is coming out of that, I think it's too soon for me to tell you it's going to look like this or this is where we're going to cut, because we actually have to go through that process and then look at the objectives we set for ourselves in the previous slide and really go through that process to be able to land at this is where we think is going to be the least impact. The overall goal is how we protect the classroom. In any of these decisions is how will the classroom be protected so that the least disruption is happening there. But we still have to look at things like low enrollment, declining enrollment, and ask ourselves really difficult questions, bringing it to the board, discussing it before any of those decisions get made. So there's not like a strategic plan where we've already decided what's getting cut and now we're going to start cutting. We're actually taking many steps backwards first and then going through that process. I hope that was a long answer, but I hope that made sense to your question.
I do appreciate the extra detail. I mean, I think for me, that's the processing. I go through the same processing that everybody else goes through, which is asking the questions. Is this an expense that needs to continue? We had that discussion with E5. Is this a program that we need to continue because we started something? Is it effective? And that's a question that came up that we still have to answer. Is it effective? And so I think with communications, not just with the public, but also with the board, it would be useful when we see like 20 contracts to have a little more information on ongoing program, new contract, and, just that discussion that's probably happening with the experts in the area and all their stakeholders to know this has already been vetted, and every question, we're always going to have questions, but that sort of information would be useful, I think, for everybody, not just for me.
Any additional questions, comments? Mr. Escobedo.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez, for the presentation. And thank you for bringing this forward as an idea and what I see as a real listening to the discussion about transparency that we heard for much of last year. And I think this is one of many tools for that. And it also allows us to really gain a more full understanding of, and when I say we, I mean the broader we of like public, our staff, our community partners, to gain a fuller understanding for the budget, because I think there were a lot of misconceptions in the last year. And so I know it's in the governance calendar, but these are going to be monthly, the budget sustainability discussions.
That's our goal. That's what we're proposing in the governance calendar.
Okay. And then the second question is the number that is on slide 4 about the financial impact of the successful negotiation that we just had. Does this include our future agreement with CSEA?
It does not.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be adding, once that's agreed to, we'll be bringing that too.
Okay. Thank you. I think for me, I just have a few comments, if that's okay. Is just, uh, again, I do appreciate these opportunities. I think it would be helpful if there was some sort of channel for further clarifying questions. If like community members, families, or staff had other questions, maybe they couldn't make it to public comment. But I'm hoping that these presentations build on each other. And I think that's what I heard from you, Dr. Maldonado, is that they're building on each other so that when we get to the new year, and we are going to be faced with some really tough financial decisions. I'm just going to say it. There's no way around that. There are going to be some tough financial decisions that we have to make. That we're not surprised about how we got there or about what information that we're talking about. So, one, a communication channel for people to get clarification about the discussions that we have in our monthly budget sustainability topics. And then the second piece is maybe in the board memo or in the presentations, linking to or pointing to the fact of, okay, on this date, so on August 6th, 2024, this was the first one, and this is what we discussed. And then as people, let's say they drop in, they're still enjoying their summer right now. The start of the school year is busy, but they drop in October and November to watch a board meeting. And then it's the first budget sustainability meeting that they're watching. Having some indication there that there were previous discussions that built to the topic that we're discussing, so that they have easy access to access that information or maybe go watch the video. I think the last piece is just I hope that as we continue throughout this school year, I know one of the big discussions has been about trust, rebuilding trust, relationships. And I've always said it works both ways, but there is an earnest effort here. And I do want to show appreciation for something like this, because I think when we get to the new year and we do have those really tough decisions, this is us taking a look at every piece of our budget and asking us, what do we need? What is protecting the classroom? What can we do without? And I know we've heard it a lot, like, let's take apart the budget and take a look. It is very complicated. If we have learned nothing else, it is very, very complicated. There's so many state and federal requirements. There's so much restricted funding versus general funding. The fact that we are a community funded district, you intertwine all of those things with one-time monies, and it is so desperately complicated. So these discussions are welcome, and I just wanted to demonstrate appreciation for this. I think this is the right move, and look forward to the monthly discussions.
Additional comments, board members? Just add a comment. Thank you for the presentation. And as I said here, I was thinking I need to just take a step back to how do we make the first step in the actions we need to take to build the relationships, right? And to build communications and transparency. Those are things we heard throughout the whole past year and even before the year, in terms of that. Once we build the environment in which we're building the trust and everybody is aware of the information and the process of what we're doing, then you don't think you have to pull the budget apart because you know, right? So it's the relationship, right? That is key to what you can discuss all day, what we're saying, and it is in earnest. This is that first step in being transparent about the information that's coming. So when we have to make decisions, be it budget or whatever, you can connect the things together, because separate and apart, they don't, really connect to the issue that may be before us. I also think that when we start to look at this piece, where the frustrations, the labor and negotiations, they happen, they're intense. That's not new, but it was a vehicle in a imperfect environment to express every level of frustration. It was the vehicle in which it happened, right? Because it really said beyond the fact that we got labor negotiations. It was saying everything else, but that was the vehicle to get it there. So the more that we are transparent, the more that we are having these conversations, and that was the atonement that I had mentioned in the last board. These are the actions in which we're going to do that. And it's important that everybody plays a part in that, whether it's listening and being informed and education. That also includes the community. The community was all up in the business of the Santa Barbara Unified School District, as they should be, but it's oftentimes misinformed, right? And so how do we do that? The first step is, what are we doing here tonight? We're having these discussions. We're being upfront about it, being clear about it. You may not like it. Yeah, may not agree with it, but you're informed about it, right? And the time is to ask the questions for clarifications, so that when it's a frustrating time, that particular time is not being used as a vehicle about something else. So this to me is it is truly about relationships. That's really what this is about, starting to build those relationships. It is a two-way street that happens, and that is in communication. That's what we heard time and time again about communication, and rightfully so. So how do we communicate better? I know that's coming too. So presenting those things that was heard and expressed and felt, throughout that whole time. So I appreciate this too. And I think it's important to keep connecting it. It's not just about the budget, it's connecting it. It's connecting it to decisions we're going to have to make. So anytime that we're coming and we're talking about open enrollment, we're talking about whatever we're talking about, it needs to be connected to decisions we ultimately will have to make. And so to Mr. Escobedo's point, as well as Ms. Beal, in those moments, we can refer people back. You may not recall. You recall on August 6th, they did this, and that's important for us to make that connection, not as a defense, but an information, and respecting what we're trying to do is build the relationship. And so I think this is that first start. This is the first step in many that we're going to have to take to get there, and explaining and inviting the conversation. And lastly, I'll say that I've been saying all the time, it's about mutual respect too. You can be upset, you can be angry, but it's about mutual respect, trying to get where we need to get to our understanding. How do we come together on this road? And we don't have an outside looking in, looking like we're crazy, that we don't care, because that's what it looked like. So if this is the first step, and where we are courageous enough to say that we're going to, have to make some necessary cuts, but making that connection all along, because it's not just about the budget. The budget is the result of what we've had to do all year long. So all the things and the actions that we've taken all year long, the budget says that. They're saying your budget is your conscience, right? So that should include what's happening, what decisions have to make. So when you present the budget, it shouldn't be there any confusion or frustration. But creating an environment where we can have those earnest conversations and appreciation for folks, because this year, having gone through that, that was a hard lesson to come through, and we certainly can do what we need to do. It's almost like I had these thoughts about that Mission Impossible. I was like, where is that music at? Dun, 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 dun. That Mission Impossible. But to say this is Mission Possible here, we can actually do what we need to do. And I say, I have a call to action. It's game on. We're better than what we've been in this last year. It's game on to be better. So if I don't hear any additional comments from the board, I just want to, there's no action being asked to be taken here. So I just want to appreciate the comments from the board, and also the presentation, and looking forward to other conversations that we will have, and we'll continue to connect, everything that we're doing. So when we have to make a year end, it makes sense. So
Thank you.
thank you.